Yo, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for checking out the channel today. Today we are going to be going over what has been a highly requested video from one of my friends. We're going to be doing a buy list of the cards coming out in Shrouded Fable. Now, to be completely honest, since this is a mini set, there really aren't a lot of good cards in this set. Like the only new archetypes that we're really getting are the Loyal 3, Revavroom, and Kingdra. Other than that, we're getting, a couple support cards here and there, but the set largely is kind of mediocre, but there are some standout cards that are probably worth picking up. So before we dive in, remember that if you guys do enjoy my content, to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, go ahead and leave me a comment down below what the most anticipated card from Shrouded Fable is for you. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into today's video. So first up, we have Joltik. I would recommend picking up 4 of this. We do have the new Galvantula EX coming out. And then even though we do have a way better Joltik, this immunity attack could end up coming up. And since it is a pretty low rarity card, I'd recommend just picking up 4 of it if you're going to pick up any amount of them. And then the Galvantula, there's a 1 Project Galvantula. The EX is coming out in Stellar Crown. So for this Galvantula, I do have it as a 4 of as well. It's not the greatest, but for 2 energy, you do 180 or 130, sorry, if you have a lightning energy attached. And then if you're hitting into a Pokemon that has an ability, you're doing an extra 50. So you'll be doing 180 in total, which with this being a grass type is actually enough to one-shot a Charizard EX. So this is a nifty little 1-prize attacker for like the Galvantula EX deck. So this is another one of those cards that, since I'm recommending you pick up like 1 or 2 copies, I would recommend just picking up 4 just because it is so low rarity. Next up, we do have the Rowlet, Dartrix, and Decidueye. Rowlet, you're probably only going to need like 2 of, but again, just pick up 4 of it. Dartrix is the standout card here. It is a new United Wings attacker, which, has the potential to revive that deck. So obviously you're going to need 4 of this to max out the damage output. And then with him being a 1 colorless attacker that is also grass, that is why we're going to be picking up some Rowlets as well. So that way we actually can use him as an attacker in the United Wings deck. And then because we are already picking up Rowlets and Dartrixes, it's probably worth to pick up a couple Decidueyes. I'd probably only pick up maybe like 2 of them. I highly doubt this is ever going to be its own deck. So it'll probably only ever see play as like a splashable 1-of attacker in United Wings. Because, doing 170 for 1 grass is kind of really good. You do have the caveat of needing to discard another grass from your hand, otherwise the attack doesn't do anything, which is why I don't think this card's that great, but I could see it being, a niche option to have. And then the Featherstock could be a way to get out of some sticky situations in the late game if you are forced to. This Tapu Bulu I don't really think is that good. 4 energies, 220, and you do 30 to yourself. If it was 3 energies, maybe, but needing 4 energies on this thing to only do 220 is not that great in my opinion. For fire Pokemon, we do have Houndour, Houndoom. I don't really think these cards are that good. I probably wouldn't even recommend picking up any of them. They don't really do anything. Then we have the Iron Moth. The Iron Moth is kind of interesting. It does have this second attack. For 3 energies, you do 120, and then during your opponent's next turn, you prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by ancient Pokemon. So this could be like a really niche like wall for certain decks to use against ancient. So I have this as like a 1-of that I would pick up. I don't really see it being played at much more, even in like something like future where you can use Crown to like buff up this damage. It's just really not doing anything relevant other than this immunity. Next up for water, we do have Horsea, Seadra, and Kingdra. I do think this Kingdra is really interesting. So I do have the Kingdra as like a 3-of because I do think it could be its own deck. And then with the Kingdra, you do have 2 different ways to kind of build around it. You can use the Kingdra's first attack to set up something like some Baxcaliburs on the bench, so that way you can power up its Hydro Pump attack. Or what I recommend doing, because I don't think these Horseys and Seadras from Shrouded Fable are actually the optimal ones to play. You can actually go a very unique route of using the Swim Freely Seadra and playing it with Finneon, so that way you can use a basic Pokemon to accelerate your water energies to, you know, potentially onto Kingdra. You'll have to do it as a Seadra and then evolve it, which could make it a little less consistent because you do have to manually evolve twice. But the Seadra does have an immunity attack. So for 1 water, it does 10 damage, and then on a coin flip, if you flip heads, you are immune from damage the next turn. So there is potential there. You could even do something like go second, use TM Evolution, evolve into some Seadras, and then on your next turn you can use Finneon, put all the energies on the Seadra, then evolve into Kingdra. So that is an option, and I think that's really only an option just because I don't think either one of these are the correct ones to play in a Kingdra deck, so you do open yourself up to that additional option for deck building. So I have the Kingdra as a 3 of, and then I have the Horsey and the Seadra as nothing. I wouldn't pick those up. Same goes for the Sneasel and Weavile. They don't really do anything, so I wouldn't really bother picking these up. I do have Reverum EX as a 3 of. This definitely is kind of like a build around card. It's not the greatest card, but for 1 metal, being able to do 140 damage if you pivot it to the active is really interesting. This does one-shot things like Lugia V-Star and Pidgeot EX, so there is some kind of merit there. And then you do have the ability to kind of just blow yourself up, do some big damage, and kind of, you know, protect this from, you know, being KO'd and, you know, kind of getting the value out of doing this. So I do think if you want to play this, I would pick it up as a 3 of. Then moving on to Psychic Pokemon, we have the Drowsy and the Hypno. I wouldn't even bother with these. I think they're zeros. And then we have the probably the most hyped card coming out of this set, being the Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir line. We only have the option of 2 different Duskulls. It's either this one or the Perplex one, which for 1 Psychic does 10. Flip a coin. If heads, it's confused. You confuse the defending Pokemon. This one has the meetup attack, which lets you put 3 Duskulls from your discard onto your bench. On paper, this one seems to be the best one, but I don't know how we're getting 3 Duskulls into the discard. And I feel like if we have 3 Duskulls to revive and we're attacking with this, we're probably in a bad spot. So I want to say that the Perplex one is probably the optimal one to play. But I could see it going either way. They both have 60 HP, 1 retreat. So they're largely the same. Dusclops, you know, has that ability to knock itself out, put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Obviously, these 2 are the cards to pick up from this set, so I would pick up 4 Dusclops, 4 Dusknoir, and 4 of these Duskull just in case. And then Dusknoir has the ability to KO itself and put 13 on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So you're just using these as damage buffing tools, and you can even create some interesting scenarios where you like turn on counter catchers and like Roxanne and Ionos and stuff. So I think this card is going to be very interesting to mess around with. Next up, we have Cresselia. This Cresselia is really interesting. Its first attack is basically just worse Moonglow Reverse. For 1 Psychic, you heal 20 from all of your Pokemon, and Moonglow Reverse moves up to 20 from each of your Pokemon and does damage. So in that aspect, this card is just worse. So where this Cresselia becomes interesting is with its Crescent Purge. You do 80, and then you can flip one of your prizes face up for the rest of the game. And then if you do, you do 80 more damage. So you can do 160 on a 1 prizer, and then you get prize knowledge. So if you flip up a card that you need, you can take it immediately, or you can leave it face up if it's not something super important and go for a different prize. So it really helps you kind of maneuver your way through your prizes. So I do have this as a 1 of just in case, as like a niche kind of thing. Then we have Sylveon. The Sylveon really isn't anything special. It's not that great. I would probably not bother picking it up. Same goes for the Toxic Rook and the Krogunk. The attack requirements are just really awkward and they don't really do too much, so I wouldn't bother looking into these. We do have the Blood Moon Ursaluna. I think this card is really interesting. It basically has, you know, the Galarian bird ability, where when you bench it from your hand to the bench, you get to attach 2 basic fighting energies to it. I think this is really interesting for something like Raging Bolt, allowing you to maybe potentially shift back to like a mono fighting instead of using like the Ogre Pawns and stuff. So I do currently have this as a 2 of. I don't think you'll ever need more than that. You maybe could end up picking up 3, but I think 2 is probably the perfect number for this card. And then next up we have Slitherwing. This is basically just a better Iron Hands killer than the other Slitherwing that we currently have. So this one for a fighting and a colorless does 20, and then if your opponent has a future Pokemon in play, does 120 more, which means it does 140. Since it is a fighting Pokemon, it will hit Iron Hands for weakness, which will make it do 280. So I have this as a 1 of, just in case you want to pick it up for like Ancient Box, as like an answer to Iron Hands. But I don't think you would ever want to play 4 of this in Ancient Box because it does have a 3 retreat. But I think it's an interesting thing for that deck to be able to use to KO Iron Hands. Up next we have the Golbat line. I think all of these are just not worth. We have a better Zubat and a better Golbat, and then this Crobat isn't really interesting, honestly. Like, being able to draw until you have 8 if you play Janine is really cool, because Janine doesn't draw you cards. So this is a way to, like, you know, keep your game moving along, but I don't think it's that good anyways. Like, it only does 120, and then you do 2 damage instead of 1 damage with poison. So it might be like a fun deck to work with, but I don't think it's that good. Absol, also not that good. Next up is Zoroark and Zoroark. I have these both as a 4 of because I think this Zoroark is very interesting with its Phantom Jack attack, 60 times the amount of EX and Vs your opponent has in play. And since I think this is a 4 of, I did look into Zoroark's, and this is technically the optimal Zoroark because it is the only one that has 70 HP. We didn't have much Zoroark to pick from, but this is going to be the optimal one, so I would pick up 4 of each of these. Next up is Inkay and Malamar. This is one of the first times where I actually have Inkay as a pickup, but not his evolution. So I think Inkay with its Mischievous Tentacle is really interesting. It could be, you know, splashable in some like control decks. So I do have this as a 4 of, just because, again, it's a low rarity card that you're already picking up. Might as well get 4 of it. However, the Malamar I don't like. Its 1 energy attack is really interesting. However, having the restriction of needing to play Xerosic, I think is really bad, because I don't think that this attack synergizes with Xerosic that much. I mean, it is kind of cool because, like, you can go Xerosic your opponent down and then use this to KO something like Bibarel, but I don't really like this card. So I don't think you should pick. If you want to, you could pick up some of it, but I don't think it's necessary. Now this card is a card that I'm pretty excited for. It's the Eviltal. I like it because of its first attack. For 1 dark, you get to put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that has damage on it already. So this is a very good attacker for like a Frostlass spread deck, because, you know, it has 1 retreat. It's really efficient, 1 energy attack, and it takes a dark energy, which means you can play Monkey Dory. And it doesn't have an ability, so it itself is not going to be taking Frostlass damage. So I'm really excited to play this with Frostlass. I have this as a 3 of. I doubt you'll ever need 4, but you could pick up 4 if you wanted. And then next up we have the Loyal 3 EXs plus Pecharunt. I do have Okidogi and Monkey Dory as 3 ofs. I think there are builds of like the Loyal 3 deck that can shift on which attacker you want to use as your main. So I think at most either one of these will be played at 3 of, and then at least each one will probably be played as like a 1 or a 2. So I have both of these as 3, just because I think there are different ways to build the Loyal 3 deck. Pheasantipity I have as a 1 of. You're really not going to be attacking with it. Its attack isn't that good. and then it's mainly just going to be splashed around in other decks for its ability. So I think this is just going to be a 1-of card. And then Pecharunt I have as a 2-of, because it's only going to be used as an attacker towards the late game as like a finisher. So you don't need to see this card early, and you don't need multiple like heavy counts of it, because you're not going to be attacking with it very frequently. So more often than not, this is just going to be a bench sitter that you're using for its controlling chains ability, which lets you pivot around your dark Pokemon and poison them, which does trigger some of these effects. So I think this is just a 2-of. Next up we have the Genesect. If this Pokemon has a tool attached, your opponent can't play Apex from their hand. This is just a 1-of. We had a similar kind of Pokemon in the old era of Apex, and you know, that was just a nice 1-of Pokemon to have around. So I think the same goes for this Genesect. I would probably pick up like 1 of it. Cufant, Caparaja, just ignore them. They're not really that good. Even if you wanted to play something like Caparaja EX, the other Cufant we currently have legal is better than this one, and I don't think this Caparaja is that good. And then Varoom, this is actually the optimal Varoom if you want to build anything with Revavroom, because this is the only Varoom that has 70 HP and 1 retreat, and it actually has a pretty decent attack. So I would recommend picking up 4 of this Varoom, just because it is now the new optimal one. And then up next we do have the Haxorus line. I have Haxorus as a 3-of, because I do think you potentially could make it its own deck. You know, having the instant KO attack for 1 energy if your opponent has special energy attached is really interesting, and then being able to do 230 for 2 makes this Haxorus really efficient. So I could see it being like a standalone kind of card. It is also very good for something like Regidrago. So because I have this as a 3-of, I did want to look at the basics. I would just pick up 4 Axew just because, and then I do actually have Fracture as a 3-of, because it does have that ability to where it is unaffected by your opponent's items and supporters. So this becomes a really decent bench sitter if you're trying to like manually evolve. So I could see this being played as like a 2 or a 3-of. So I'd recommend picking up multiple copies of this card if you do want to potentially build around Haxorus. And then the Last Dragon is another one of the most highly talked about cards from this set, and is the new Kyurem. So the Kyurem does have that anti-plasma, which says if a card with Chorus in its name is in your opponent's discard, then you can use this Pokemon's Trifrost attack for 1 colorless energy. And then the Trifrost discards all energies, does 110 to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is just being looked at as the Lost Box killer. So I have it as a 2-of, just because in the decks that are probably going to be using it, you're probably going to want to see it pretty frequently, but you don't want to potentially start it, and you don't want to you know, draw into it too much, because you're probably only going to want to attack with it once or twice. So I do have this as a 2-of. I don't think you'll ever need more than that. And then for the colorless Pokemon, all of them are pretty useless. The only one that was worth looking at was this Eevee, because we did just get Sylveon EX revealed as a stellar type. However, this is not the optimal Eevee that we would be playing. We do have the 50 HP Eevee from Twilight Masquerade that has Ascension. So if you do go second, you can attach and then use Ascension, evolve into the Sylveon. And then even if you want an Eevee with more HP, we do have a couple different Eevees that have 70 HP that do better attacks than this one. Up next for the trainers are pretty easy. I always recommend that you just pick up 4 of every trainer, just because you never know when new cards will come out and make use of these. And they're trainers, so they're heavily splashable into anything. So I just recommend picking up 4 of all the trainers, obviously except for the A-Specs. And then as far as the A-Specs go, I would just pick up 1 of each of them. You know, obviously some A-Specs are more playable than others. However, I think Pokemon has done a really good job at allowing most of the A-Specs to be considered in some strategies. You know, because I'm someone who currently owns all of the A-Specs that are printed right now, and I think I have actually used every single one of them at least once in some decks. So I do think it is really worth picking up all of these, especially since they all have like pretty unique effects. You know, like the laser just auto burns and confuses. The neutral center prevent all damage into Pokemon that don't have a rule box by attacks from Pokemon EX and Vs. So basically, if you're playing like a one prize deck, you get immunity from two prizers, which is really cool. And then the Pokevital heals 150. It's a lot of damage to heal on an item. However, we do have to keep in mind this clause of if it's in the discard, it can be put in your hand. So that means if you mill this off of Pokestop, then you actually can't add this to your hand, which is really unfortunate. And then, like I said, all the rest of the trainers, I would just pick up 4 of them just because trainers are generic and splashable. Yeah, guys, with that being said, I do actually have a visual tier list already made. So this is what I would recommend for a buy list for Shrouded Fable. So we have everything at 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the cards to ignore. Like I said, a lot of this set is pretty meh, but I actually was kind of surprised when I was going through and making this how many cards I actually was, you know, slightly considered in picking up. We do obviously have a lot of duds down here, but we actually have more cards that are kind of worth picking up than we do not. So yeah, guys, that is going to be my buy list / tier list for the Shrouded Fable set. Remember, if you do enjoy this kind of content, to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, go ahead and leave me that comment down below, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. See ya.